A fat kid who loved basketball disappeared from the world for 15 years, then emerged as the most dangerous dictator on Earth with nuclear weapons pointed at every major city. But the secret of how he eliminated his own family, fooled the CIA, and became untouchable involves Swiss boarding schools, Disney obsessions, and executions so brutal they shocked even his own generals. Welcome to Power Secrets, where we expose the most shocking transformations in modern history. What you're about to hear is the story of Kim Jong Un, the man who went from unknown third son to nuclear-armed supreme leader, but whose path to absolute power involved betraying his mentors, murdering his relatives, and creating the most isolated prison state in human history. Before we dive into this terrifying story, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe these dark truths about power need to be exposed, hit that subscribe button because what you're about to discover will change how you see modern dictatorship forever. March 15th, 2009, 3:47 a.m. A private jet landed at Pyongyang's deserted airport under cover of darkness, carrying a passenger that North Korea's own intelligence services didn't recognize. The 25-year-old man who stepped off that plane was overweight, spoke fluent German and French, and had spent the last 15 years living in complete anonymity in Switzerland. His name was Kim Jong Un, and according to official records, he didn't exist. For over a decade, the third son of North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il had been hidden from the world, attending elite boarding schools under a false identity, while his father's regime convinced the world that only two sons remained in the line of succession. But as Kim Jong-un walked through the empty corridors of his father's palace for the first time since childhood, he was carrying secrets that would reshape one of the world's most brutal dictatorships. Because this wasn't just any spoiled rich kid coming home. This was a young man who had spent 15 years studying the weaknesses of Western democracy, learning the psychology of power, and planning the most ruthless political takeover in modern history. What happened next would shock North Korea's own elite, terrify neighboring countries, and prove that sometimes the most dangerous leaders are the ones nobody sees coming. To understand how Kim Jong-un became the world's youngest nuclear dictator, you need to understand what North Korea was like when he disappeared as a child. This wasn't just another communist dictatorship. This was a hermit kingdom where information was so tightly controlled that even high-ranking officials didn't know how many children their leader actually had. Ama asıl şok edici olan şey. Kim Jong-un wasn't supposed to rule North Korea at all. His older half-brother, Kim Jong-nam, was the designated heir apparent, charming, educated, and already being groomed for leadership by senior party officials. His other brother, Kim Jong-chol, was considered too weak and effeminate by their father, but still ranked higher in the succession than the unknown third son. Kim Jong-un was what royal families call the spare's spare, so far down the line of succession that he seemed irrelevant to North Korea's political future. His father had so little confidence in him that he sent the boy away to boarding school in Switzerland, effectively erasing him from North Korean society. But that exile would become Kim Jong-un's greatest advantage, because while his brothers remained trapped in the bubble of North Korean propaganda, he was learning how the real world worked and how to destroy it. The Liebefeld-Steinholzli School in Bern, Switzerland, was one of Europe's most exclusive international boarding schools, catering to the children of dictators, oligarchs, and billionaires who wanted their offspring educated in neutral territory. For the students who attended, it was a finishing school for the global elite. For Kim Jong-un, attending under the pseudonym Pak Un, it was a laboratory for studying his future enemies. His classmates remember him as a quiet but observant boy who was obsessed with basketball, particularly the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan. He would spend hours analyzing game footage, not just for entertainment, but to understand strategy, teamwork, and the psychology of winning under pressure. But his teachers noticed something more disturbing: Kim Jong-un's fascination with power dynamics and historical dictatorships. For a school project on World War II, He wrote a detailed analysis of how Adolf Hitler had consolidated power, eliminated rivals, and maintained control over Germany. The paper was so sophisticated and chilling that his teacher kept a copy, later describing it as the work of someone who understood tyranny better than most adults. İşte tam bu noktada her şey değişti. Kim Jong Un wasn't just studying at his Swiss school. He was conducting intelligence operations against his own classmates and their families. Using his false identity and innocent appearance, he gathered information about how wealthy families moved money internationally, how democratic governments made decisions, and most importantly, how Western intelligence agencies operated in neutral countries like Switzerland. His roommate later revealed that Kim Jong Un would stay up late into the night, not studying for exams, but reading news articles about North Korea and analyzing how foreign media portrayed his father's regime. He was building a comprehensive understanding of his country's international image and developing strategies for manipulating it. Most remarkably, he began creating detailed psychological profiles of his classmates, documenting their fears, ambitions, and weaknesses in notebooks that he kept hidden in his dormitory room. When his Swiss education ended in 2009, Kim Jong Un had compiled what amounted to a database of intelligence on some of Europe's most powerful families, information that would later prove invaluable when he needed to negotiate with Western governments or intimidate international business leaders. The fat kid who loved basketball had transformed himself into one of the most sophisticated intelligence operatives his generation had ever produced. But Kim Jong Un's most important discovery during his Swiss years wasn't about his enemies. It was about himself. He realized that being underestimated was his greatest weapon, and that his appearance and demeanor could be used to lull opponents into a false sense of security. When he returned to North Korea in 2009, Kim Jong Un faced a challenge that would have destroyed most people. He had to convince his father's regime that an unknown 25-year-old with no political experience deserved to inherit absolute power over 25 million people. Henüz en büyük sürprizi görmeden, Kim Jong Un's rise to power involved eliminating his own family members in ways so brutal that even North Korea's security apparatus was shocked. His first target was his uncle Jang Song-taek, who had been Kim Jong-il's most trusted advisor and was expected to serve as regent until Kim Jong-un gained experience. Jang controlled North Korea's secret police, had extensive international contacts, and commanded loyalty throughout the military and party hierarchy. In December 2013, Kim Jong-un accused his uncle of treason in a public trial that was broadcast on state television. The charges included attempting to overthrow the state by all sorts of intrigues and despicable methods, and dreaming different dreams than the supreme leader. But the real charges, according to defectors who later escaped North Korea, were much simpler. Jang Song-taek had questioned some of Kim Jong-un's decisions and suggested that the young leader needed more guidance from experienced advisors. For questioning the supreme leader's judgment, Jang was executed in a manner so gruesome that details were classified even within North Korea's government. According to intelligence reports that later surfaced, he was thrown to a pack of starving dogs while his family was forced to watch. But eliminating his uncle was just the beginning of Kim Jong-un's family purge. His half-brother Kim Jong-nam, who had been living in exile but still commanded respect among regime traditionalists, was assassinated in February 2017 at Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Two women, recruited by North Korean agents, rubbed VX nerve agent, one of the most toxic substances ever created, on his face while he waited for a flight. Kim Jong-nam died within minutes, killed by a chemical weapon so dangerous that it's banned by international law and stored only by the world's most advanced military programs. The message to anyone who might challenge Kim Jong-un's authority was unmistakable. Distance, exile, and international protection meant nothing to the new supreme leader. Dur bir dakika. Bu detayı kaçırma. The most chilling aspect of Kim Jong-nam's assassination wasn't the method. It was the planning that went into making it look accidental. North Korean intelligence had spent months studying security footage from Malaysian airports, identifying blind spots in surveillance coverage, and recruiting unwitting accomplices who believed they were participating in a television prank show. The operation was so sophisticated that initially, Malaysian authorities couldn't determine how Kim Jong Un had died. When forensic analysis revealed VX poisoning, it became clear that North Korea had deployed weapons of mass destruction against a civilian target in a neutral country, violating every international law governing chemical weapons and state-sponsored terrorism. But perhaps most disturbing was the revelation that Kim Jong Un had personally approved the operation and monitored its execution from Pyongyang, watching security camera footage as his half-brother died on the airport floor. The fat kid who had once loved basketball had become a leader capable of ordering the chemical weapon assassination of his own family members in foreign countries. Şimdi gördüklerin hiçbir şey. Kim Jong Un's transformation of North Korea involved creating the most advanced surveillance state in human history, using technology he had studied during his Swiss education. Unlike previous North Korean leaders who relied primarily on informants and physical intimidation, Kim Jong Un implemented digital surveillance systems that monitored every phone call, text message, and internet search made by North Korean citizens. Cell phone networks were redesigned to automatically record conversations and location data. Computer systems were programmed to detect and report anti-state keywords. Most innovatively, Kim Jong Un created a social credit system similar to China's but even more comprehensive. North Korean citizens were assigned loyalty scores based on their family background, their consumption habits, their work performance, and most importantly, their reactions to government propaganda. Citizens who showed insufficient enthusiasm during mandatory political rallies had their scores reduced. Families whose relatives had defected to South Korea were automatically classified as hostile and subjected to increased surveillance. Children who failed to report their parents' private criticisms of the regime were punished, along with their families. The system was so effective that it essentially eliminated organized dissent within North Korea, while creating a population of willing informants who monitored each other for signs of disloyalty. But Kim Jong Un's most ambitious project wasn't domestic surveillance. It was his nuclear weapons program, which he accelerated beyond anything his father had imagined possible. Between 2011 and 2017, North Korea conducted 4 nuclear tests, including the successful detonation of a hydrogen bomb with a yield estimated at 140 kilotons, 10 times more powerful than the weapon dropped on Hiroshima. The regime also successfully tested intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of reaching the United States mainland. These achievements weren't just military breakthroughs. They were diplomatic weapons that transformed North Korea from an isolated pariah state into a nuclear power that demanded respect from even the world's largest military forces. In Anmikaksanama, Kim Jong Un's nuclear program included developing miniaturized warheads that could be mounted on submarine-launched ballistic missiles, giving North Korea a nuclear deterrent Korea a second strike capability that made military intervention virtually impossible. Intelligence analysis revealed that North Korean submarines could potentially position themselves off the coasts of major American cities, making any attack on Pyongyang tantamount to national suicide for the United States. This nuclear umbrella gave Kim Jong Un something that no North Korean leader had ever possessed: genuine security against regime change, and the two negotiate with global superpowers from a position of strength rather than weakness. The fat kid from Swiss boarding school had become one of the most dangerous people on Earth, controlling enough nuclear firepower to trigger a global catastrophe. But perhaps Kim Jong Un's most brilliant strategic innovation was his manipulation of international media and diplomatic relations. Unlike his reclusive father, who avoided foreign engagement, Kim Jong Un actively courted international attention while carefully controlling his image. His 2018 summits with South Korean President Moon Jae-in and U.S. President Donald Trump were masterpieces of political theater, portraying him as a reasonable leader interested in peace, while never actually making binding commitments to denuclearization. The image of Kim Jong Un walking across the demilitarized zone to shake hands with Moon Jae-in became one of the most iconic diplomatic photographs of the 21st century, showing him as a young, dynamic leader willing to break with the past to secure his country's future. His meetings with Trump, conducted with all the pomp of superpower diplomacy, established him as a legitimate world leader rather than a rogue dictator, even though he made no meaningful concessions on his nuclear program or human rights record. Most importantly, these summits bought him time to continue developing his weapons programs, while international sanctions were temporarily eased and military tensions were reduced. Today, more than a decade after that mysterious return to Pyongyang, Kim Jong Un has achieved something that seemed impossible. He has transformed North Korea from a failed communist state into a nuclear-armed regional power that commands fear and respect from much larger nations. He controls one of the world's most sophisticated surveillance apparatus, commands absolute loyalty from a military that has never known defeat, and possesses nuclear weapons capable of destroying any city on Earth. His regime has survived economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, natural disasters, and the COVID-19 pandemic while maintaining iron control over one of the world's most repressive societies. But perhaps most remarkably, he has done all of this while maintaining the image of being an unpredictable emotional leader whose decisions are driven by impulse rather than calculation. The fat kid who loved basketball has become one of the most successful dictators in modern history, ruling a nuclear-armed police state that has eliminated every internal challenge while deterring every external threat. The question that haunts intelligence analysts around the world is simple. What will someone capable of murdering his own family and developing weapons of mass destruction do when he faces his first real crisis? The answer may determine whether the Korean Peninsula remains stable or becomes the flashpoint for the next world war. So what do you think about Kim Jong Un's transformation from anonymous schoolboy to nuclear dictator? Does his success represent the triumph of ruthless calculation over international law? Or is it evidence that modern dictatorships can outmaneuver democratic institutions? More importantly, what does his story tell us about the effectiveness of economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation when dealing with leaders who are willing to sacrifice everything for power? And how should the world respond to a dictator who has proven that he can eliminate rivals, develop weapons of mass destruction, and manipulate international relations while maintaining absolute control over his own population? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us whether you think Kim Jong Un is a strategic genius or a dangerous madman, and what lessons other authoritarian leaders might be learning from his success. And if stories like this concern you, if understanding how modern dictatorships evolve and adapt is crucial for protecting global security, hit that subscribe button and join our community here at Power Secrets. Because we believe that the most important political stories are often the ones about leaders who prove that the rules of international relations can be rewritten by those willing to break every moral boundary. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember, sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who smile while they sharpen their knives.